You are here with me, Jill Maurer, and Donnie Grissom.
Hello, y'all.
If you don't know us, I am a jewelry designer, and Donnie is an estate jeweler and gemologist. And today we're talking about the different periods of jewelry. These periods of jewelry coincide with different periods in art, in architecture. There are times that are blocked together when people talk about design. I have done a series on collecting jewelry where I go into detail talking about each of the jewelry periods. I will be able to put some videos up here to link so that you can see some of these other periods, but YouTube limits me to 5. They won't all be up there. Look below and there will be a list of all of these periods so that you can take a look at them. Today we're going to take each one and just talk about whether we like that period, what are our favorite pieces from that period, would we collect from that period, or what would we collect from that period.
So I guess we'll start with Georgian.
We will start with Georgian. That's when we first really see jewelry. There was jewelry before then, but there's not really enough of it to really collect. To the modern eye, a lot of the Georgian period jewelry looks a little off. It doesn't look quite right. One reason is the jewelry was designed to be worn by candlelight. And so a lot of the stones were backed. They're like actually foil on the back of them. And we weren't as good at cutting stones, so the stones aren't as precise as we are used to.
And also in the Georgian period, there was a lot of formality with everything. And so you would see a huge spray of diamonds on the bracelet, on the necklace. So it's not my favorite period because I think it's a very difficult style to wear.
There are very few collectors of Georgian pieces. Now, it's had a little bit of a renaissance where people are liking some of the Georgian pieces. It's the only time I've ever seen people asking for Georgian pieces. Usually,
I think Downton Abbey brought it back.
Maybe. Usually, you have to be a serious collector to be looking at Georgian pieces. If I were to collect something from the Georgian period, for me, it would be a Riviera type necklace where it's the bigger stones going around. Oh, you know what else? Trembler. There were some interesting
There was the tremblers, oh my God.
That's what it would be.
The brooches, or in the tiaras, the tremblers, That was also great. Now, I do like that, but there's still a lot of diamonds. It's all formal, very formal.
It's very formal. They weren't running around in jeans.
How sad for them.
And you have to remember that you're putting jewelry on somebody, men and women, by the way. Don't think this was created for women only. In fact, more men in the Georgian period were wearing jewelry than women. You got a picture there also have these huge wigs on. They've got very, very fanciful, big clothing. If you're not familiar with this, but you are familiar with Hunger Games, it is sort of that ridiculous look that some of the people have in the rich side of things.
What is Hunger Games?
This is a modern movie.
Okay.
It's a more modern movie.
Not that I'm from the Georgian period.
No, you should see that though, because there's this, in the Hunger Games, there's the very rich and the very poor, and the very rich are wearing almost costumey
It's very
pieces.
elaborate.
And it's very, very Georgian. It's very Georgian.
I have to watch some of that.
Yeah, we'll watch that. So that covers that. And of course the men and women are wearing a lot of makeup, and it's very fakey makeup. Bright
like
red,
theatrical.
big moles. Yeah. Anyway, so I would say the Riviera, but the Trembler.
Yeah, that's probably the best part of that period. For me, it's just so much formality to it that I'm not drawn to it. I appreciate all the pieces and the workmanship in them. But then there is the Victorian period. The Victorian period can be a lot of fun. They got a little more whimsical.
This is when the middle class does start getting more jewelry.
Right.
Everybody's following Queen Victoria, who loves jewelry and has so much. And the Victorian period is a long time. So there is something for everybody in Victorian.
Right. One of the best pieces that I ever had.
This still makes me mad.
And Jill did not buy this piece.
I wanted to. He wouldn't let me.
But you should have stopped me and
I
said
know.
yes.
He wouldn't let me because he felt like he would have to give it to me at a very low price.
And I wanted to make some money on it.
Which he could have. If you ever find another one, I want it.
I know.
I
never seen it. But it was a snake necklace.
Looked great on me. Fit me
In
perfect.
turquoise and diamonds. It was beautiful.
And this is something that you could wear formally, but I could wear it with what I have on right now.
Actually, it would be beautiful. With the blue you have on right now, what? And the way you have that cut and your cleavage is all stuck up there. That snake would be sitting right there, ready to attack.
In the Victorian period, the snake symbolized knowledge, wisdom. It's not a dark thing for them.
Right.
Some of the snakes are beautiful, and there were beautiful snake bracelets, but if I could get one thing from the Victorian period, I think that's what it would be. I still fantasize about that.
Oh, the Victorian period was all over the place.
They had a lot of beautiful seed pearl things. Mary Todd Lincoln famously wore seed pearls from Tiffany & Company to Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural ball. There's a lot of mourning jewelry in the Victorian Victorian period. I'm not as attracted to that. Even in art and everything, I like things to be light and bright. I appreciate a lot of the morning jewelry. They even took their hair and made beautiful pieces out of it. While I appreciate it, it's not something that I really want to wear. There are some buckle bracelets that are gorgeous, and most of them would have been in pairs.
Right.
They've been split up since. There was just so much though from the Victorian period. I won't say that the Victorian period was one of my favorites, but some of my favorite pieces come from there. There was a lot of great stuff. And then there was a lot of kind of not so great stuff.
Right.
What are some of your other favorites?
Well, I think from the Victorian period, there were a lot of people that buy cameos.
Yes, they're beautiful.
And so
cameos.
from the Victorian period, you have the beginning of what estate collectors do today, which is they usually start off with cameos.
And then also micro mosaics. This is a time when things are still done by hand. It's not like the cameos today that are carved by laser or whatever.
No,
These are some beautiful, and they're carved from shells or lava or coral. In fact, there
Some
was
of
a
the
lot
lavas. Oh, what was about to say? Some of the lava cameos are so beautiful.
And then there was a lot of enamel.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. Some of the bangles that were this cobalt blue, cobalt blue enamel, and then it would be coated with rose-cut diamonds. They are gorgeous.
And of course, there are beautiful tiaras. I mean, I don't know what you do with a tiara today.
I do.
In addition to some of the jewelry, and the jewelry is fabulous, I think my favorite's going to be the snakes and the serpents when I really think about it. But there were also little picture frames, things for your dressing table,
Right.
hairbrushes.
When the Victorian, they had something for everything. If you were brushing your hair, they even had a pick that would clean out the brush. Instead of reaching in and just pulling the hair out of the brush, no, they had to make something to do that with.
Out of sterling or gold.
Oh yeah, out of sterling gold.
Right.
Or they'd be encrusted with stones, semi-precious stones or precious stones. But they were collectors. Collectors of insects, collectors of everything.
Some of the insect jewelry too. This is when they were starting to find some Egyptian finds happening during the Victorian era. A lot of the jewelry represented that, and there were scarabs. Some of this was out of enamel, but different colored gems. Some of the gorgeous, the bugs.
Lots of branches.
Branches were especially early when she was young.
Right.
Yeah, so there's just so much, and there are some beautiful pieces. Because a lot of the pieces were designed for the middle class, speaking from the middle class, some of those were not made as well as some others. So you have a big variety of quality. I tend to like bigger pieces. Some of the Victorian pieces are smaller because they're meant to be clustered. It depends on where you are in the Victorian time frame. But it is a great period with a lot of pieces.
Yeah, it's just so broad across.
It's not one you carry that much of.
I don't carry a lot. Once again, I find that period, the Georgian and Victorian, I think it's just a little difficult to wear.
And the way that Donnie sells, he sells to people who are wearing their jewelry. In the estate world, people have certain types of collectors and they like certain types of things. And for Donnie, it isn't really about just loving something because you love it and you're not going to like put it in a shadow box on your wall or anything. His
You
clients
need to wear the piece.
His clients wear the pieces and he loves that. Now, you can wear Victorian jewelry. It is wearable and it is durable. It's just you have to have a certain look and a certain style kind of to pull some of the pieces off. I could pull off one of those Victorian snake necklaces.
I could pull off one of those tiaras. But moving on to the next period.
We have Edwardian, and this is from King Edward. This was Victoria's son. It's not a very long period, but it has a distinct look. Cece's going to join us for Edwardian. She just decided that she had to be here when we were talking Edwardian. One of the things about Edwardian is that we move into platinum. People are using more platinum, and they get more skilled with setting stones. So you get these airier pieces, where the Victorian pieces were more solid with a lot of gems. This is where you get almost a lace effect out of platinum. Usually it's diamonds. There are some other stones used, but not so much.
Right.
It's mostly platinum and diamond.
Right. I find it's a very feminine period then, because things they flow.
Not that men weren't wearing them too. We're not talking, we're talking about the style of the jewelry being feminine. But yeah, the pieces are beautiful. This is wearable stuff, by the way. There are some necklaces that come down like this, and then there might be a bar, and then there are two that hang, and there might be a diamond on either end. Those are very wearable. And I love the pins, the big brooches that have a lot of negative space, and then they have the diamonds out of platinum. And some of them are smaller, very, very wearable.
And the pieces were very fluid. Even when the pieces were stiff, but they looked like you could just bend them. It was a beautiful period. And it's a period I think you can still wear today
I think
without
so, too.
being too formal.
Right, you can wear them with a very modern thing. Now they are diamonds, so they're formal in that way. They're not overly ornate and they're not overly colorful. And some of the rings especially are, you know, sort of have that lacy kind of look and they go up your finger.
Right.
And some of those are very easy to wear even today. That's pretty much the look from the Edwardian period. There was some gold, there were some other things. That is the look that sticks with me.
And it wasn't like the Victorian period where there was so many different styles.
Well, it wasn't as long.
And it wasn't as long.
It was just a short period.
Queen Victoria lived forever.
And she reigned from a very young age.
Right.
And loved jewelry, just loved it. So she was collecting so much. Edward was more practical. Well, I wouldn't call him practical. He was definitely known as a playboy and all of that. But he did see himself as being much more modern than his mother was.
Right.
Then we move into Art Nouveau. And this is an interesting period. It's not named for a royal. And Art Nouveau is more of an American term. It is in Europe what they would have called the Belle Epoque period. This is where we're celebrating nature.
Right.
We're rejecting all of the machine feel. Am I not petting you enough? We move back into more gold. There is some enamel, and this is plique azur. It's sort of the see-through kind of enamel. The feeling is a lot of nature. There's flowers and flowy vines. Everything is very natural and
And we're
flowy.
getting into yellow gold.
Yeah, a lot
A
more
lot of
teal.
yellow gold was used during that period, unlike the Edwardian period before, when everything was platinum, with
Yep.
very little being made in a yellow metal.
So what are some of your favorite pieces?
My favorite pieces came, and it wasn't a piece I had, it was another dealer that had a bangle bracelet, but it was done in acorns and oak leaves, then with touches of enamel throughout the stunning piece.
Yeah.
Could be in a yellow gold. And it could be worn easily today. I shouldn't say contemporary, but it would be, you know, it's still,
Could be
it was
worn with
wearable.
contemporary
It was,
clothing.
and I think that period is a wearable period.
Yeah, for me, I like some of the women. I at one point had a beautiful enamel woman out of gold that was a necklace. But if I were to pick just one, they did a lot of these big dragonfly pins,
Right.
and the plique azur, that enamel that you could see through, really plays well with these dragonfly. There are butterfly pins too. My favorite though are the dragonflies. Again, this wasn't a very long period of time and it wasn't done a lot, but you still can find the pieces and there are some beautiful things. A little bit more difficult to wear. There are some that are wearable, but when you really try to do everything in it, is very, very much a statement. A lot of the pieces are figural, so they are
Right.
they're little pieces of art.
And it was also a period that they didn't wear a lot.
No.
You didn't see, unlike the Victorian period, when they would have maybe 6 small little brooches sitting here as a collection on. In this period, they didn't have a lot. You didn't see them like in the Victorian period, coated with, you know, a collection of something on. And they weren't elaborate. It was about workmanship at that point. And you didn't see a lot of diamonds used. It just cut it out. It was the craftsmanship in the metal.
Right, there might be some diamonds, but the piece wasn't really about the diamonds like it was in the Edwardian. In the Edwardian, they were showing off how well they could place diamonds and how well they could cut them. The next period is very different, and that is the Art Deco period. This is one of my favorite periods. There are things that I don't like in the Art Deco period, but there's a lot that I do like, and this remains very popular because it is very wearable.
Right.
They are very, very gemmy. There's a lot of stones in them, but they're cut precisely, and a lot of times the piece follows the flow of the stones, or the stones are cut into interesting shapes and the piece flows around that. That's really what they're showing off.
They started using a lot of colored stones during that period. A lot of onyx, diamonds and onyx was huge.
And sapphires and rubies and emeralds. Anything that you can cut into interesting shapes, like there were some coral here too, but they're cut differently than they had been cut before.
And there was almost like, it was like 2 different periods in Art Deco. You know, the one period which I like, the pieces that are very geometric in their shape. And then you have the period there's a lot of filigree being used, which was very formal. I think that's what people associate with in the Art Deco period.
I like the gemmy ones. From this period, I like the different bracelets. There are big, thick line bracelets. There are smaller line bracelets, but I tend to like to wear a big, thick one. But we all know my favorite thing from this period. Do you remember?
I don't remember. What is,
How can he not
I
remember?
know what it
My
is.
favorite from this period is Tutti Frutti.
Oh, the two, yes.
This is when Cartier started making Tutti Frutti, and they still make it today. And this was taking those emeralds, rubies, sapphires, and carving them. They didn't call it Tutti Frutti at that time. They later do call it Tutti Frutti. But they carve them into interesting shape. From Deco, I love those big bracelets, and I love anything Tutti Frutti.
Tutti Frutti. I do too. That is.
Especially the bigger and grander, the better.
Some of my favorite pieces are the big bracelets that you were talking about. They're not only the Tutti Frutti, but it's the ones that you would see with all the black enamel, and then it'd be the triangles and surrounded by diamonds and that.
And some of the Egyptian stuff too.
The Egyptian stuff, absolutely beautiful.
This is a beautiful time. They have a lot.
Don't you think probably the Art Deco period is probably the most sought after by people that are collecting?
I would think so. I think it's the most universally liked, and it is the period that people even today, when they design a wedding ring or look at a wedding ring, a lot of times what they're doing,
they're influenced by that period.
much more sometimes than they even realize. I've had people come up and say, "Oh, this is new and it's great," and and I'm like, it's not new. It is great, but it's not new. Beautiful, beautiful pieces. And some of the ring, it would have a central stone, maybe cut in a polygon, and then everything would follow it. It was an amazing time.
I think there's also a period that for the first time they were making, even for the lower class, was buying jewelry for the first time.
Unlike the Art Nouveau, they are celebrating that things are machine made, that you are machine cutting stones. So the next period is the retro period, and there is a lot to love in the retro period.
Oh, it was bold, beautiful, heavy. Everything was large. And yellow, rose gold, that's when you start to see a lot of rose gold.
Yeah, this is all about gold, and you see it in the yellow gold, rose gold, some green gold. It's big and it's bold. Lots of movie stars are wearing it. And they have also found troves of gems in Brazil. So you're getting big aquamarines, big amethysts, big citrines, and they're cutting them in sort of, just big and bold, as big and bold as they can. Brooches, necklaces, and rings. And it's always about the drama.
A lot of bracelets.
A lot of bracelets.
Lots of bracelets. Once again, this great geometric play.
World War II is going on, and so platinum is not as available because it has some military uses, but the gold is. Some of the themes have kind of a war theme. There are bracelets that are based on the tracks the tanks make, but it's also a reaction to World War II. We're just trying to have something to celebrate, and a lot of times that's the movies. People will go to the movies and they would just wear these huge pieces of bold jewelry. Now there are people who really don't like retro. If you want dainty, retro is not for you, but it is so me.
Oh God, because it was more of a masculine period.
It is a masculine look. A lot of the women are wearing jewelry.
Isn't that like one of the first periods that women are now producing themselves and making pieces, not only just in the jewelry business, but also in the clothing industry?
Interesting.
Because men were off fighting the war.
The clothing does get a little more masculine in that it has the broader shoulders, it's cleaner line. During the Deco period in the Roaring 20s, the skirts had gotten shorter, and we don't give that up. We like the idea of the shorter skirt. But it's a very slim look, and this bold jewelry plays off of it well, and the hair is sleek, but it's done in those styles. It's a great period, and I hadn't thought about women driving it, but it makes sense. I love the clothing from the retro period and the jewelry.
I love the jewelry. The jewelry is it works today.
It does.
It's both men and women.
I'm not somebody who likes to stack a lot of jewelry. I want to wear a piece and have it make a statement, and that is what this does. There is not a lot of dainty retro jewelry.
No, not at all. None. But aren't the bracelets from that period? Incredible.
They started playing with a lot.
Incredible. For me, we talked about the Georgian period, the Victorian period, and all the other periods leading up to the retro. There's not a lot I can wear from those periods. In the retro period, those bracelets, the big bold bracelets that that look like the pavements, some of the bracelets that were supposed to duplicate like the railroad tracks, are gorgeous.
You say there's not a lot you could wear. You could wear anything. It's just not
I can wear anything.
Your style. Some of those Edwardian brooches look great on a man's suit. You can do it if it's your style. It's just not your style.
No,
retro is more your style.
Retro is,
It definitely is. At this same time, and then extending further, is what we call mid-century. While retro was inspired more by World War II, it's a reaction to World War II, mid-century is more hopeful. The war is ending, it's hopeful in this way. The space race is starting. So you get this kind of atomic feel, a starburst feel.
Right.
It is fun.
And everything's elaborate and big.
Yes.
I mean, the cars were huge. They started building long houses, you know. Everything was because we were so proud of what we had just accomplished in the war.
And prosperous. People
Yes,
were
we were.
prosperous.
Everybody was working.
So you get a lot of wonderful jewelry and a lot of different price ranges too. Some of the best jewelry from this period was actually sterling. That's not necessarily
Right,
what you
right,
carry,
right.
but you do have people like George Jensen, not Jetson.
Oh, yeah.
Jensen. So it has a George Jetson kind of feel, but you have
It does.
yeah. But you have people just being very celebratory and creating a lot of fun pieces. And, you know, David Webb comes from this time, who's one of my favorites. This period does extend beyond, you know, some people would say that we did mid-century even through the 80s, even though you wouldn't call it that.
It is my favorite period because I think it was the best craftsmanship till this day. That was the best craftsmanship that came out of that.
There's a lot to be said for that. I think there's some beautiful
Well,
craftsmanship.
there's a lot of beautiful things being made right now, not only by you, but by a lot of other.
And even earlier, there was some great stuff.
Yes, but it was the quality of stones that were being used during this time.
There was just a seriousness to the fun. Design was still very important. We go through periods later where design gets left behind a little bit, but design was very important. People were having fun, they were dressing. That was key too. You have fanciful things and then you have everyday things, but people wore this jewelry. This jewelry was worn all the time, day and night. People like to change their jewelry. It's not as sentimental like it was maybe earlier. This is more about jewelry being fashion and changing with what you're wearing. There were people who would have their strand of pearls that was still suitable, but if you wanted to have fun with jewelry, it was there for you.
And there wasn't just one look in that period. It was everything. They went, and they were copying from all other periods as well during that time. But some of my favorite pieces are those brooches.
Yeah.
Oh, they had so many elaborate.
We've talked about this, wanting to bring the brooch back.
They had. That's when the brooch in the 1950s. The brooches. Oh, God,
And
they were
colorful.
beautiful.
They could be all gold, but they could be very colorful. They were gorgeous. And you'd have a ring to go with it and maybe earrings, and you could buy jewelry in sets, but not necessarily wear the whole set.
Which is your favorite period?
That's hard for me because I'm such a jewelry whore.
But you're admitting it.
Yeah, I'm admitting it. There are pieces I love from all of the periods. If you told me that I could only for the rest of my life have pieces from one period, I would probably pick mid-century, but I'm trying to decide if that's because I know you and know that I have access to the best pieces, because the Deco period I do think is very wearable, but I would hate to be limited to that for my whole life. I think some of my favorite, I would say mid-century, retro though.
Yes.
Retro. If I had to wear from one period, I think it might be retro.
I think the retro period is the period that I would pick for you.
Yeah, I
Because you like bold pieces.
I do
You
like
like bold
bold.
things. You like something to make a statement.
and there is that in mid-century, but it is
Oh yeah,
in retro.
they have it in mid-century.
I could do fine my whole life for sure with retro and mid-century. I could.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Although I love the Tutti Frutti, but I could get away with that because they kept making it, and there are some interesting Tutti Frutti mid-century pieces, but they look very similar to the Deco, so I would be okay. What about you? What would you pick?
It definitely would be the it would be the mid-century.
The
But
mid-century.
once again, I love retro, and the two they don't really overlap in style.
Right.
But they not at all. But they are both still bold.
Yes, yes.
You still have some bold pieces coming out of both of those.
And I also tend to wear more gold, so there's a lot of gold in both
And
of those
I like
pieces.
I like yellow gold. More,
Yeah,
so.
if you're really a platinum person, the place for you is Edwardian and Art Deco.
Deco, yes.
Those are the two, and they are great. They're beautiful.
Right.
Great. I don't know how long this video was.
Oh, God.
This one might be a really long one, but there's a long chat on a lot of the historic periods of jewelry. And of course, do check out the playlist below where I go into depth about each period and I show you photographs and some examples of these pieces.
This was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Please do subscribe if you haven't already.
Bye for now.